Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Development Discourse, where we ideate for Africa's development. My name is Patrick Okigbo. I'm the founding partner at Nextier, which is a multi-competency advisory firm focused on solving complex development problems. Nigeria was previously known mainly for its oil and gas resources. Later, it became infamous for the 419 scams. However, the rise of Nollywood made Nigeria well known as a hub for the African cinema industry. Nowadays, the country is widely recognized for its influence on the global music scene through Afrobeats. This cultural phenomenon reflects Nigeria's core DNA of Naija no dey carry last. This never say die attitude permeates various aspects of Nigeria's culture, music, movies, fashion, cuisine, arts, sports, etc. My guest today, Obi Asika, has a front row seat in the growth of Nigeria's movie, media, and entertainment industry. Indeed, he's one of those who built the infrastructure for the industry's growth. He coined the phrase Nigeria's soft power in reference to this DNA and how, if properly leveraged, can generate more economic growth than the country's petroleum resources. Obi was born into a life of art, culture, intellectualism, and state administration. These influences shaped his early life, despite a law degree from University of Warwick, a role as a research assistant at the World Trade Center, and several transnational business interests. Obi's heart was in the music industry. In the late 1980s, he DJ'd and organized over 200 events in clubs across the United Kingdom. He started a nightclub in Lagos called Enter the Dragon in the 1990s. At the club, he discovered Junior and Pretty, who became sensations in that decade. And here I'm kind of dating myself, you know, for our younger audience. His record label, Storm 360, led the globalization of Nigeria's music and the arrival of Afrobeats. Since then, he's left his fingerprint on many of the innovative pushes in the industry. The list is way too long, but I'll just give you a short sample of his recent endeavors. He was a founding partner, Dragon Africa, which is a strategic communications and conferencing company, executive producer, Big Brother Nigeria, 2006, The Apprentice Africa 2008, Dragons Den 2008, and so many more. West Africa partner and co-founder of AMPN West Africa, producers of 3 big shows, The Voice, The Winner Is, and I Love My Country. He's also a member of the Africa Advisory Committee of the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art in Washington, D.C., member of the Presidential Committee of the Nigeria Startup Act, team leader of the Technical Working Group of the CCHT, which we're going to talk a lot about today, the Culture, Creative, Hospitality, and Tourism Industry National Development Plan for 2020 to 2050, producer, and this is one of my favorites, The Journey of the Beats, a 10-part documentary series on Showmax, and recently appointed as Director General, National Council of Arts and Culture, which is the office he's sitting in while we're having this conversation. Ojinnaka, you're very welcome.
I didn't even give you your proper title, but I will.
I mean, you know, it's great to have you. But let's start from maybe a definition, right? Nigeria's creative industries contributed about $153 billion to gross domestic product in 2023. In one of your
Naira, you mean? If we were $153 billion already target?
Yeah. But in one of your interviews, you projected that this could be a 200 billion industry by 2030, right? If the government provided some of the needed support. So maybe let's even start by defining what is this industry. So when we think about the creative industries, who's in that space?
Okay, well, I think there are a number of definitions for this. First of all, thanks for having me on the conversation. There are a number of definitions for this. Some call these things the CCI, the Culture and Creative Industries, and there's a UN definition, and it speaks about 22 to 26 different sectors. The creative economy, depending how you look at it, has 13 or 29. because some of the sectors have subsectors, but to run through some of them for you, obviously you have arts and culture, you have performing arts and visual arts, you have recreation, which is nightlife, entertainment, bars and lounges, you have entertainment, live entertainment, you have dance, theater, film, drama, you have music, television, you have broadcast media, advertising, architecture, urban planning, you have the culinary arts, food, right? You have festivals, you have, there's a number more, have design, I've already said visual arts and performing arts. You also have the space that concerns gaming, animation, esports,
which is
comics. Yeah, of course, comics. So when you look at it, there are 49 sectors in total that are together are considered the creative economy. It is large, it is expansive, it is extensive. And one of the things is that almost all of those sectors have never really been engaged by the federal government. They've never really had a home in government, and the government has not had a position on them. So what everybody knows in those sectors is they have done it without government. Those in the music industry, in Nollywood, in fashion, in animation, in gaming, and in esports. These are self-starters, entrepreneurs, small self-starters that have built from bottom up and have built something that is incredible. So the fashion industry, for example, according to AFD, the French Development Agency, the fashion industry is at $8 billion per annum already in Nigeria. Now, this is without having organized retail, and without having that, they're still at that level. So when you look at the country and you look at the different sectors, the key thing that I see from the economic standpoint is disconnected markets and the value chain not being connected to enable everybody to grow. Because what has happened is people are growing in spite of the environment, not because of the environment.
And so, and that's an important point, because I've heard you in different fora talk about, certain things that we require the government to do to grow this industry. But some may also argue that maybe we've grown the industry because the government has not been involved, right? And maybe the government should stay out. How do you balance that argument?
I think everybody who is in the private sector, I spent my entire life in the private sector, is perfectly entitled to say that of government. I don't think government has been a great businessman or is a great businessman. So I don't believe government should be coming into the sector at the intervention level where it's trying to be an operator of the sector. Government needs to provide the rails, the infrastructure, right? The access to credits, the access to marketplaces, and that is the regulatory side of things. That is what government needs to do. Government cannot regulate creativity, for example. Government cannot come and say, this is how you should make your film, or this is how you should sing a song, or this is how you should do a dance. All those things will be disastrous. But what government can do is create the framework through which people can now participate in these sectors and better monetize and benefit from what their creativity is doing. Government can certainly create a national IP register. Government can definitely ensure that the Bankers Committee begins to take IP as collateral for finance. If you understand that the American economy is maybe principally driven by IP. IP, when I say IP, I mean intellectual property. So what is that? It means that you can back ideas. Africa has a big problem in not backing innovation and ideas. Those of us that were involved in the National Startup Act, that was at the core of it, to create a situation and a funnel that the Nigerian government can back innovation, which is generally coming from original ideas. If we look at the IP registry worldwide, and you look at who's producing the most IP, you'd be surprised to find out that it's China. But when you find out it's China, then you can now understand what has led to the Chinese economic growth over the last 3 decades. It is from understanding the necessity of building IP, exploiting it and supporting it and pushing it through. So in Nigeria, we can no longer treat these things, the intangible assets that we have, the cultural assets that we have, the stories that we have are limitless. They're endless. I put out a request to one of the commissioners of culture just 3 weeks ago, to commissioners of culture around Nigeria, asking them to submit to me their lists of festivals in their states. The first state that submitted was Edo. Edo submitted over 1,200 festivals. I was speechless. That's just one state in Nigeria. I asked them about languages. Plateau State has 200 languages. So we contain multitudes. What we have in Nigeria is endless. If you're looking at measuring IP, this is a nice little thing I like to do. If you're looking at measuring IP and the value of IP in the Nigerian context, let's say there are 220 million Nigerians. If we agree that the minimum value, the MVP, the minimum value of the output of every Nigerian in terms of IP is worth $1,000. If it was worth $1,000, that means today we're sitting on a base of $220 billion. That's not a bad base to kick off from. But you first have to see the base and engage it to unlock it, right? So I think we're still in the early stages of government beginning to understand the need to support the sector, which is why we are happy there's a ministry. That's the core reason why I even accepted the job in the first place, is that if we've been doing this thing from the private sector, we've been doing it unpaid, we have an opportunity to help to lead policy to make us arrive at a place where we can unlock the total value and the immense value that is hidden within our country, right in our faces.
And I'll come to some of the work you're doing, at the National Council on Arts and Culture. But I wanted to spend maybe another question on how government could use the creative industries to build a better society, right? So when you think about the United States and what Hollywood has done for the United States, it's basically projected an image, of that frontiersman, that independent spirit, etc. It was carefully cultivated, it was carefully built. And for a country like ours that is so diverse, shouldn't that be the kind of role the government should be seeking to use the creatives, to do? And I think it kind of plays into your concept of soft power, looking at what soft power can do internally, not externally. How do you respond?
Yeah. I respond to that by saying 100% you're correct. But I think soft power is internal and external, because your self-image is also reflected in what you project to others. So in Nigeria, obviously, my friend Femi Adubemi, who's one of the most senior producers in the country, he talks about this a lot, and he's completely correct. As a country, as a government, you must be focused on intentional storytelling. That is how you build the narrative of your nation. Building the narrative of your nation builds the connection points for your citizens. So until you exploit that and begin to bring that out, if you do it the wrong way, then it looks like propaganda. If you do it the American way, then it looks the right way. The Pentagon, the defense industries, the cities of America, the Jewish lobby, everybody is invested in Hollywood. Everybody has an agenda, and everyone pushes their agenda out. But it is the difference between art and artifice to determine the quality of what you put out. If you make it like artifice, then it's just going to look like propaganda and it's cheap and you're not convincing anybody. But if you tell a great story, if you tell the story of how Kanem Borno was sending ambassadors to the Sultan of Cairo in the 13th century,
exactly,
that's an incredible story that we haven't even engaged. We have not yet engaged Nigerian history. We have not yet engaged Nigerian stories, and there are a billion of them. You may not know this, but something I talk about all the time, people I know who listen to me will have gotten bored of it, but I'm not going to stop until we actually begin to do it, is what is the difference between Thor and Shango? What's the difference, right? Thor, I'll tell you the difference. The difference is that the African, unfortunately, because of the duality of the African and the matrix that we get caught up in with religion and colonization, we're not able to engage our full essence. Therefore, we can't reimagine our mythology. And if you must remember that our mythology is older than Greece and Rome, which are both derived from Egypt, and we are about the same timeline as Egypt, right? So mythology is one of the great things that inspires storytelling worldwide. So the difference between Thor and Shango is that Shango is broke outside Lagos, abandoned by 100 million Yoruba people. Thor is approaching $70 billion. So who's the fool, right? Who's the fool? We are cheating ourselves of what we are supposed to be doing because we have not understood the power of what we hold. So you go to Brazil, you go to Cuba, you go to Haiti, they are worshiping Yoruba gods because our people arrived there and changed everything there. The food, akaraje in Brazil and akara in Nigeria is the same thing, is the same people, right? We as Africans and as Nigerians specifically need to be much more curious. The carnival in Trinidad is Ofala, okay? The carnivals in Jamaica and Barbados, it is Igbo people, principally. Then, of course, the Yoruba, you see them in Cuba, you see them in Haiti. Do you understand? So Our influence, at least I think 45 or so % of all the Africans that left the continent are Nigerian, right? And everywhere we arrived, we changed everything. We didn't just arrive naked and uneducated. We came with herbs, with medicine, with technology, with music, with food, with fashion, with our own approach to life. And those things affected and changed every single society in the West and created enormous wealth. And of course, over the last 250 years, you have the Aguda from Brazil, all the people that were returning back to Nigeria, also changing the environment here in Nigeria and affecting the local cultures, the local music, the local fashion. So I think there's been a two-way stream. We as Nigerians perhaps need to also understand that in 2024, if you took the African Americans as a nation, I think they're in the top 10 economic powers on the continent and the world, right? So the African Americans, who are 40 million people, right, have a GDP many times bigger than 1 billion Africans. So we need to start showing some respect to them, understanding that those are our principal alliances, right? And stop trying to bypass them when we go to their markets. Because in my world, the people that gave the Africans, the Black people on the planet, their real dignity are the African Americans. Through the civil rights movement and all those things, they fought for that, they got it, and they got it for everybody. The second people, the South Africans are, of course, the next.
And we'll get into some of that, time permitting, but I wanted us to kind of unpack what are some of the challenges we've got with the industry today. Why isn't the industry growing on leaps and bounds like it should? You look at the music industry, for instance, Burna Boy, Wizkid, Rema, all these guys are, filling up stadiums, around the world. We're not seeing a lot of their shows in Nigeria. What's happening to our movie industries? Okay, we're beginning to stream on Netflix and, showing our cinemas, but shouldn't we be doing multiples of that? What's holding us back? Can you help unpack some of those challenges?
I think the first thing is this, is that the biggest investors in Nigerian creativity have not been Nigerian, except for the small startup guys like me and people like us that have been on this road trip for 30 years where we were told we were mad. Principally has been foreign companies led by MultiChoice and DSTV, without whom we would not even literally exist, because you need platforms to engage the world. So they gave the platform for the music industry. Africa Magic has provided an enormous platform for Nollywood, right? Now, if you look at Nollywood, the biggest problem Nollywood has is the broken television market in Nigeria. So the free-to-air television market in Nigeria is smaller than the free-to-air television market in Ghana and Kenya. And it should be on the same size, if not bigger, than the free-to-air television market in South Africa, which is approaching $2.something billion per annum. The Nigerian one is about $300 million. The Nigerian pay TV market is about $500 million, which is a reverse of the norm. Because what has been happening in the Nigerian market is people have been buying airtime, okay? Not focusing on content. When you focus on content and you sort out your audience measurements, that anybody anywhere can turn around and tell you what's the #1 TV show in Nigeria. Today, nobody can tell you that. Therefore, the advertisers don't know where to follow and put their money. So that is a business model issue that has to be fixed. You also have to educate producers to understand that the biggest opportunity for them is television. I'm sure you know the show. You remember the show Seinfeld? And of course, you remember Cheers. Seinfeld has not produced a new episode since 1996, right? But it has earned $4 billion in television licensing since that time, because it's been licensed into 200 markets. So yes, Netflix and streaming is nice, but streamers pay you one time and you're done. They don't pay royalties, they don't license. They do buyouts. So actually the strategy for me is to break the African algorithm, but let's credit Netflix. Netflix tripled production budgets for Nollywood from where it was at in a closed market. They opened it up and tripled the production budgets. And of course, producers are doing much better as a result. But we're Nigerian, we have big ambitions. So the big ambitions include global box office and includes global TV licensing. So I would love to see a Nigerian show that was running on BBC One, running on CBS, running all those things. So Bob Hart's Abishola, which is a Nigerian primetime television show on CBS in America, is a primetime show in America commissioned by a major American network. That is probably a stronger proof of concept than any other thing that has come out of Nigeria in terms of visual content because that has shown that the Nigerian story is global and is domesticated, and therefore you can get premium dollar for your production in America, which is the biggest.
Why are we not seeing more of such shows, but we keep seeing more of the Nollywood type productions? If we've proven the concept that our story sells globally, why aren't we seeing even the Nigerian Naira or the investments we have moving more in that direction to open up more of that market?
I think you have a situation where most of the Nigerians that have capacity and money don't understand the industry. They don't understand the value chain. So therefore they look at it, even the bankers, and they'll tell you, we don't understand it, it's not structured. This is a lie. It's laziness, right? IP has been funded for 250 years in London, in Berlin, in Miami, in New York, in Atlanta, in Paris. You understand? So film and television are being funded forever. They're not funded by high street banks, they're funded by pension funds and private equity, principally. But there is a method and a methodology to do these things. The issue has been, you cannot come and look at content as a transactional thing. It's not trading. It's not touch and go, right? It is the IP will last for maybe 75 years, depending on what the IP is. So the ability to earn is to earn in multiple frames and windows. It's not just on first release. First release may be to box office. Second release may be to television. Third release may be to streamers. Fourth release may be licensing. Do you understand? There are multiple revenue streams. There are multiple windows of release. And it is a business. It is not entertainment. They're not having fun. All of these things are multi-billion-dollar industries and businesses. And what happens is that perhaps in Nigeria, they don't understand that everybody that works in Hollywood is an Ivy League graduate. Everybody that works in the studios is best in class at what they do. They're the best engineers, the best lawyers, the best accountants, the best risk management consultants. What it is, though, is that you have to understand that the value that you're actually working with, the value that you're pushing is the intellectual property. Whether that is the idea that becomes Facebook, or the idea that becomes Rihanna's next record, or the idea that becomes the next cartoon, or the next T-shirt. The gap sometimes between the idea, the content, and then the business, which is the productivization, right? That productivization is where really the real money sits. And that is the biggest opportunity perhaps facing Nigeria. Our Nigerian soft power people easily have 1 billion followers in social media today. So we're not talking about potential. We're talking about opportunity. Now, to give you a clear opportunity, Aba is sitting there. The people in Aba make over 10,000 pairs of shoes a week. If Aba can put together a transparent platform where creators can receive their income legitimately for them and they can license product to them, there's no reason why Aba should not be making all the products for everybody in media and entertainment, which would be all the Nollywood girls, all the Nollywood stars, all the music stars, all the comedians. So Don Jazzy can release his next range of Don Jazzy headphones. It's made in Aba and he can sell 1 million in a week because the market is here. Let's not even talk about America. Let's not talk about West Africa. In Nigeria, we have not been able to service our markets. We're not able to service them with products and merchandise because of the gap, right?
So
isn't
that really an IP protection question, right? Isn't it because
it's a trust question.
Okay.
The law is in place, but enforcement and trust are the two missing elements, right? So government has to work out a stronger framework for enforcement. And then the business community, both the traders and the distributors and the creators, have to find common trust. Where I can say,
is there a private sector solution to this? Obi, you see, whenever stuff gets into government should, you cannot lose me. So first of all, can you move the phone up a little bit so we can see your a bit more? But really, Nollywood did not wait for the government to fix anything. Yeah, they moved out.
But Nollywood killed itself. Without Africa Magic, there wouldn't be Nollywood. You know why? Because the distributors in Idumota and Alaba were not regulated. They became they were regulating themselves. They were taking editorial decisions themselves. They were filtering talents themselves. And it died. At that level, it died. Plus the gap marketing that some call piracy also killed it at that level. There's still Nollywood Asaba that is now focusing on YouTube, which is the principal outlet for what you might call the B-level or C-level content of Nollywood. And there are many heavy conversations going on with senior Nollywood producers about whether they should be focusing on YouTube. I think it's an LCD conversation. It's lowest common denominator. You're chasing your tail because you cannot get the same aesthetics that you're looking for if you're trying to get a commission at Universal Studios or to get onto Fox or ABC, as you will get if you just put your stuff on YouTube and you can monetize. Of course you can monetize, but what is the content you're making?
So if you look at countries like maybe South Korea, right? And the K-pop industry, right?
K-pop and K-drama, Squid Games.
Exactly. So yes, there could have been some government involvement in setting the frame, but it was private sector money that drove it, right?
No, Patrick, it's entirely public. It's entirely public sector money and public sector framework. Private sector only got involved after government laid it down. That's the truth of it. Nigeria is the reverse. Nigeria has been a standard. South Koreans have had a significant strategic plan since 2008-9. I had a conversation a few years ago with Justin Bieber's manager's partner, and he was telling me an interesting story. He said that they had become the #1 entertainment company in America because apart from building Justin Bieber into a phenomenon, they'd invested in over 100 tech startups, and 30% of them had become unicorns. So these guys are incredibly wealthy. You know that we call Justin Bieber the phenom. Anything he does is 1 billion views on YouTube, right? So they said, what else can they do to get better? You know what they did? They sold their business for $1.8 billion cash to the Koreans, who own the biggest K-pop group. I said, why did you do that? I said, because the Koreans are the best. They're the best assets. Their government set up the best regulations to drive K-pop and K-drama. Then the private sector keyed in. Now the Korean economy is seeing about $12 to $15 billion a year. In Nigeria, PwC will tell you that the Nigerian creative economy is already at $25 billion a year for 2025. The problem is we're so unstructured in terms of our reporting that me and you are trying to find the physical human beings who are holding that $25 billion. So we can also participate in the dollars, right? But the truth of the matter is the South Koreans, if you look at K-pop, with no disrespect, K-pop is basically an industry built around Michael Jackson and black boy bands, right? So the people do not have the talents, the natural talent that the Nigerians and Africans have. They don't have it. What have they done? They got bought. They sold their business so they could learn what the Koreans were doing. Because now they're operating the Korean business. The company is called HYBE, H-Y-B-E. And, in their first year, I think they did $2 billion revenue. So it's just to say that there are set up processes. And I would like to say that there's a very extensive roadmap and industry work that has been put together by the minister and the team, which is going to be driven down and executed through the agencies that I think will give Nigeria a competitive possibility of arriving at that $100 billion economy.
Okay, so
that process is something I've been part of from time.
Excellent. Again, if you can move the camera up a little bit so we can,
That better?
But how does this new, because that's where I was actually going with my next question, which is, I know you were part of putting together the creative economy policy and a number of these types of policy discussions, etc. I was glad when I heard the announcement that you're now the new Director General of the Council of Arts and Culture. I think it's a great opportunity to bring many of those discussions and see how we implement them. So first question is, this new roadmap, how much of the prior thinking does it incorporate? Yeah. And what's the idea for implementing? Knowing that writing of these documents had never really been the core challenge. It's finding the human beings and the discipline and the competence, to drive the implementation.
No, 100%. I think perhaps the most important thing is that there's a full nexus between the ministry, which is the policy arm, and the agencies who are to implement. So the agencies, we have a very strong group of individuals, many of whom I've known for many years, who are appointed across the 11 or so agencies in the sector. I think we have a common approach and a collaborative approach to the policy. And what we're trying to do is to strip it down and implement it. And where we are at the moment is obviously we've only been around for 4-6 weeks. And we're in a position where we're finishing our internal reviews of our agencies and coming forward to have we're all presenting our sectoral roadmaps internally to the ministry next week. And I think by the time we get to May, everybody's moving into implementation mode. And, you know, we have to sign these performance bonds with the federal government. We have a bunch of KPIs we have to execute. So this thing is actually measured and measurable. And we have a situation where we all know what our deliverables are. And those deliverables go across from job creation. It's not all sexy stuff like putting on a show. It's job creation, it's capacity building, it's internal reimagination of these agencies, what they are, what they stand for, what they need to be doing. From my perspective, what needs to happen in my agency, for example, where all the 49 sectors that I mentioned earlier are actually all within my purview, is for us to be relevant to these sectors, we have to be able to provide them relevant services. So if we are just sitting there and we think, oh, we are government, you have to talk to us, I don't think that works. What I believe is that we have to be fit for purpose. We have to work out what we know anyway. I know anyway what most of the sectors are looking for from government or from assistance in terms of access to markets, access to capital, access to opportunities, and better frameworks and relationships and how the value chain can be affected. So obviously we have to have the minister and the ministry have had stakeholder sessions at their level. At the agency level, we still need to do that ourselves so that we are working collaboratively with the private sector. This is not something that I don't think government can grow these sectors. I think government can create the enabling environment, create the rails in terms of the infrastructure, and create the access, and also create the thing that government brings that nobody else can bring, which is the authority. So that in any room in the world where they're discussing these sectors at the global level, we should be in the room. Any place where they're talking about creativity on the planet, everybody should know we're amongst the most creative people on earth. If we're talking about festivals, we have the most. We're talking about languages, we have the most. We're talking about cultures, we have the most. So we have to begin to know these things, exploit them, and we also have to educate ourselves internally. Because I believe that when Nigerians know and understand each other's cultures, Nigerians will be more homogenous. One of the things we haven't done is translate culture. And I think we have to translate culture. We have to understand what is Ofala, what is the Durban, what do these things mean and why are they important? When do they happen? Why do they happen? And that is all part of the conversation for me. So that's part of the way I'm approaching.
By the way, those conversations are what we need to build that perfect union, you know, as Nigeria.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's that part that we really need to do to form a nation, but then there's the business part that drives the economy. And when it comes to that second aspect, one of the big issues is how do you fund, how do you finance these sectors? And as someone who sat on the other side, you know, building a, you know, either a nightclub, which I found out actually today in doing some research. I didn't know that. Or you know, building Storm Records, or putting together, you know, big events, big shows, you know, doing TV production, or even your latest Showmax documentary. Financing is a key component, you know. So what are some of the big ideas that the government should be thinking of on unlocking finance for the sector?
Well, the government, I can tell you that the government has extensively been meeting with Afrexim for a specific fund for Nigeria. You know, the IDICE fund is going live, has gone live this month. It's a $600 million fund. 50% of that fund is coming to the creative industries. 50% is going to the digital startups. So those are two of them. I can tell you that IFC and UNESCO have major plans for funding into this sector in this country. I can tell you that a number of major global groups have specific funds, private equity funds for the creative industries, for film, television, sports, and entertainment, focused on Nigeria. The question about it is, when will the Nigerian financial sector step up? Okay. When will the Nigerian investors step up and join the conversation? So that we don't become like the tech system where it's just FDI from Delaware corporations and local capital is not invested. The local capital in the tech side is only just begun to play in the last 3 years. And we need the local capital because there's a lot of local capital, which is playing specifically in recreation and bars and lounges and nightclubs and hotels. We need to bring them into this side, the content side of the conversation.
Why are they on the bars and nightclubs, but not on the shows, on the movies, etc.?
Because they can see the revenue side much easier than they can see it on the film side. So, but let me give you an example, right? We're in a country where last month, Maven Records concluded a deal, which is part of their journey of the last 10 years. I'm privileged to be somebody, and let me just congratulate them publicly, Don Jazzy and Tega, who's the chief operating officer. That deal is one of the most important deals in Black Africa. In 2019, Jason Njoku completed a deal with Iroko, with ROK, with his wife Mary, with Canal Plus. Today, Canal Plus is about to acquire MultiChoice. At the time it happened in 2019, I remember saying to the Enugu state government, how come you didn't celebrate this deal? ROK was built out of Enugu. They raised 500 million naira from Bank of Industry. They were building, all of their productions were being done out of Enugu between 2015 and 2019. They eventually moved out of Enugu because of lack of support, I believe. But in that period, they built that business. They were making something like 80 television series a year and 200 movies, right? And they were putting them onto their platforms, their channels that they had on Canal Plus, on Sky, and on MultiChoice. What happens? The biggest exit in Nollywood history happened to them in 2019. Canal Plus bought that company for something like 35 million euro. 500 million naira to 35 million euro is a pretty mighty upside. Yep. That's what they did. They retained that money, and they retained Mary as the CEO. And they doubled. I was giving some ROK numbers. And I think the same thing with Maven. Kupanda Capital invested in Maven in maybe 2019, maybe $10 million for some equity in Maven Records. And they looked to exit in 2023. You know, private equity, how it works. As part of that deal, Universal Music, the biggest record label in the world, invested into Maven, and the ticket size is between 150 to $200 million. Now, hey, you can say Don Jazzy again. That's a good number. You know, to the extent that if you give me that kind of money, you can take this job. I'll be there right now. You understand? Because we'll all be singing and dancing. But that's just the market to tell you the upside and the opportunity that is possible in this market. And trust me, they didn't have everything set up. They didn't have all the ideas and answers. They just had focus and diligence. So focus and diligence, coupled with talent and opportunity and execution, will enable Nigerians to win in this space. And I'm just giving those two as an example. There are many, many more in visual arts, in literature, in movies, in animation. There's a guy called Jide Martins, Comic Republic, right? He did a deal with Universal Studios for $4 million for 4 characters. He has 200 characters in his universe. That means his value is a $200 million value. And he hasn't even come out yet. When the stuff comes out in 2026, he's now entitled to go and do those 4 characters in Canada, in Japan, in China. He's going to re-up and re-up and re-up. And people are going to be saying, is that what you were talking about? Meanwhile, he was running around Lagos even last month looking for investment. So the issue is investors need to be educated about the opportunity. They need to understand that Nigerian IP is world-class. Nigerian IP is desired massively, whether it's fashion. I think, for example, one of the biggest things you're going to see happening is food, right? Nigerian food and cuisine is already exploding massively globally, and it's going to keep getting bigger, right? So these are some of the things to watch out for.
Fashion as well. Fashion
is the biggest segment of the Nigerian creative industries. Fashion is said to be at $8 to $9 billion already per annum, because every Nigeria has a tailor who's his personal designer. The tailor, you're laughing, but it's the reality. The tailor is looking at Instagram. The ladies will send that page and say, you see what that woman is wearing on Instagram, make it for me. And that's the fashion industry. When we now get to scale, where the designers can make 10,000 pieces and push it out into the audience, then you are really going to see something incredible, right? I just saw somebody said comedy has exploded on YouTube. Look, Emanuela, digital sovereignty is one of the issues you have to look at from the Nigerian perspective. If your IP location is based in Nigeria or is based in California, you might see 1/6 of the income. So Emanuela is out of Port Harcourt doing her thing. She's been making $6 million a year as the #1 creator on YouTube since 2016. That's 8 years, that's $48 million. If you look at their overhead, you can see they have no overhead because they shoot on the street. They make $48 million, her and her uncle, right? That's one, literally. I mean, I just want that to sink in, right? $48 million they've been paid by YouTube in the last 8 years, okay? Now, take that, if they were based in California, that number would be $200 million. And they would have had associated deals in broadcasting, in advertising, because the industries are more connected then. Sure. Here, our industries are still a little bit, still like sitting in the corner here. Oh, I'm an advertiser. I'm not talking to you. So we need to sort of bring people together.
So Obi, we were quite intentional in the title for this discussion, which is the how, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've talked about a couple of things, and in many of your interviews, you've touched on many of the things that need to happen. Can you just take some time to piece it all together for us, right? So let's say you're sitting in a room with Asiwaju, and you have carte blanche on how to just grow this industry to become the fastest growing segment of our economy, spinning out jobs, spinning out money, just spinning out all the positives.
Yeah.
What would be that story? What would be that story you weave for him that he can see clearly what he needs to do to get the industry moving? And again, if you can just move the camera up a little bit.
No, thanks a lot. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to make my pitch. So my pitch is very simple, right? Sir, it is time to invest in the Nigerian people. It's a very simple thing. The Nigerian people possess extraordinary IP, talent, and creativity. If we invest a minimum of $1 billion to unlock that space, when I say invest, I don't mean putting up structures where the IP and the loan facility means you have to go and bring your grandmother from the village. I mean that we can set up a national IP register. We can begin to invest in ideas and in innovation. So it's not just the creative industries or the cultural industries. It's a total mind shift for the nation. That's why the Startup Act is also important. We have to back innovation. We have to back Nigerian ideas. We have to back Nigerian cultural expression. The Nigerian Fund for the Arts is sitting in my agency. It is my intention to partner with the financial sector and launch it at a ticket price of $1 billion, where 30% of it is grant funding, 70% is debt funding for commercial support for creators and creatives in these sectors. Some of these sectors, each sector is slightly different. One of the things we need to do is create digital platforms across all the spaces. At the same time, we still need to resolve physical distribution. And in resolving digital platforms of physical distribution and the IP registry and IP enforcement, what we do is create security for more investment to follow. This market can easily accommodate $100 billion of investment in this space because of the size of the market, the size of the country, the size of the opportunity. We have 40 football stadiums in Nigeria that can host events and conferences, but we all know they're not spec. If you respect those 40 stadiums, if you add 20 arenas, the live touring industry in this country can easily be a $10 billion segment, right? Fashion is already a $10 billion segment, and fashion can double in the next 5 years. Television and broadcast is operating below par, which is why everybody's chasing the streamers. If you fix television grows to $2 billion, 70% of the content has to be local. Nollywood is occupied and getting paid properly, and they can license their content globally and bypass the streamers themselves until the streamers are ready to pay them competitive prices. So it's about leverage. It's about creating leverage for ourselves. If we don't back our own ideas, Africa has not backed the African story. Nigeria has not backed the Nigerian story. You were talking earlier about intentional storytelling. When you talk about the growing pains of being a new nation, the growing pains come from not telling the story and not teaching the story, avoiding history and not learning from history. So if we can dramatize the stories, bring them home in an intentional manner to celebrate ourselves. There's nothing wrong with celebrating ourselves. There's nothing wrong with celebrating our country. And there's actually a lot to celebrate and a lot to share with the world. But of course, we spend all our time being negative and talking each other down. We can never get to that particular place. So for me, the biggest opportunity and the biggest thing that can happen for Nigeria is for the Nigerian government to back the Nigerians. And to back the Nigerians is to back their creative expressions and output, i.e. their ideas and stories, because they are limitless and the value is endless and the IP is global, plus it is golden.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, so let's talk about implementation, right? So you've sold him now, he's heard you, he loves what he's heard, but he's still got to implement it through agencies. such as yours. When we spoke last week, you were in your home in Lagos.
No, I was in Abuja. I wasn't in Lagos.
But you were home, right? And
yeah.
It's clear everything was fully set up. You wanted to do it from the office to show this is the National Council of Arts and Culture, etc. But we've run into, there's no light.
We run into Nigeria.
Yes, no light, no internet, etc. Right?
But it's not going to stop us.
Yeah. So my question is, you can have all these lofty ideas. I panic anytime I think that it's got to be implemented through the bureaucracy. So are there some thoughts on how the private sector can work closely with government to unlock the financing, to drive many of the
100%. I mean, listen.
Without depending so much on these agencies, no disrespect intended here, but just how does the government focus more on enabling the private sector to lead in many of these discussions?
Well, it's still through the agencies, because the agencies are the implementing arm of government. Now, from my perspective, I am
Isn't that the problem? Isn't that the problem? Isn't the problem that the government is looking to implement?
No, I don't think so. The government has to implement policy. The problem is when policy does not get implemented. Do you understand? I think we have to implement policy, and we have to bring policy to the private sector to now drive it further. But if we don't put in place the rails, you're going to go off-road because there's nothing to drive on. It's the same thing with infrastructure of life, right? If they don't build the road, you can't get to the next place. So I think the government role is clear. I don't think the government is there to do the business. That's the difference, right? I don't think the government is there to make the film. But I think the government is there to create the environment where those who make films can raise more capital, those who make films can have more protection, and those who make films can get more distribution, because the distribution companies have been able to come in, invest and participate, because we've created an environment for them to do that. That is the role of government, I think. For example, we want to make sure that this fund for the arts comes alive. I'm not going to sit here and do it by myself with the guys in government. I've already spoken to 3 or 4 of the biggest financial institutions in Nigeria to try to get them excited about the opportunity. Hey, come and talk to me. How can we make this happen? Go and bring the best in case. What's happening with the Korean fund? What's happening with the French? What's happening with the British and the Americans and the Russians and everybody else? Let's take what they've all done and let's tune it for our own purposes, and let's go live. You're going to be the fund manager. We're not running the fund. It's like the iDice. It's being run by Chapel Hill, I believe, and a few others. So it's got to be private sector people at the top level who have the trust of operators in the private sector. As you know, you're totally right. You panic when you hear government. I'm like that, but I'm in government now. so I mean, I understand that energy 100%. But the truth of the matter is that I feel like the energy is right in our ministry. The plan is strong. The agenda is connected. And we have been speaking extensively to global and local partners, almost all of whom are either development partners or actual private sector heavyweights, either in the Nigerian context or the global context. And everything we're seeing and hearing points to the fact that we're on the right path. Of course, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. So when we review this conversation in 12 months, we'll see how far we've gone.
You took that right out of my mouth, because I was going to say, we're going to come back to this, either publicly or in person, privately, and we'll see how your position may have held out or changed. Yeah.
Of course, when you're trying to drive reform and you're trying to create a new way, one of the things you need is resources, right? So we need resources, we need funding, we need support, we need personnel. These are the things you need to be able to achieve what you're trying to do. And I'm lucky because I have wide networks. There are all sorts of people working with us already who frankly are not even being paid, and we haven't even worked out whether we're ever going to be able to pay them. But the truth of the matter is, like, I think you have to be slightly mad to do these things. You have to have that passion, you have to have that belief, and we have that. We have to have some integrity and some understanding of the enormous opportunity. So what I'm looking at is the upside. The upside for Nigeria is unbelievable. I'll give you a classic example. I was just saying it earlier. How can we be sitting here? And this, when I say it now, it's going to sound crazy. Nigeria has something like 235 public universities and institutions. Alumni of all those institutions is probably 15 million people, right? There's no alumni products available in this country. You can't buy a UNN Nigeria t-shirt or hoodie.
T-shirts.
You can't buy a Unilag one, Ife, Badon. So it's like, what made all these institutions sit down and deny themselves their own commercial opportunities? Any school you go to anywhere in the world, the first thing you're going to see is the school shop.
Merchandise.
You go on their website, you're going to see the university shop. The first thing they do is start pushing product at you. So if you have 4 million alumni that were, or 400,000 alumni that went to Unilag, how come 4,000 of them are not wearing your t-shirt? Just 1%. So I think that we need to productivize our economy, right? We have enormous influence. When you have 1 billion followers, but you have no product, you're cheating yourself.
Exactly.
Right? We have Aba and all these places, Computer Village, Sabongari, all these places are making products every day and selling. But unfortunately, some of them are going to China to bring the product and sell the fake version. I'm like, no, just talk to House of Tara right here. Talk to us. Take the licensing, go and sell it, and let's share money. So we have to, I think there's an education level to this thing where we have to stop cheating each other. We also have to have value, see value in ourselves. It's kind of like, there's a way in which we tend to diminish ourselves, you know what I mean? So we have to see value in ourselves to make the money you're talking about. If you don't, every night, I remember a time 25 years ago where young Nigerian females would not wear Nigerian designers, right? It is impossible to think of such a thing today. Everybody's wearing Nigerian designers, right? And I think that also comes with, as we evolve, as we become more self-confident, we begin to appreciate ourselves. It's the same thing with the music. There was a time when you couldn't hear any local music in the clubs or the bars or the parties. Now you struggle to hear foreign music. The food is globalizing at a speed of knots. Chinese and Indian food has done it for 40 years. I think Nigeria's got next. If Nigeria has next, that's billions of dollars. It's also cultural presence. It's something. There's a chap called Adeshokwe who is one of the hosts of Afro Nation, and he calls all the musicians my ambassador, and he's totally correct, because when those musicians go wherever they go, they're ambassadors not just for Nigeria, not just for Africans, but for Black people. So when you see them sell out stadiums and you see them sell out venues, it makes us proud. You were asking me earlier, why aren't we seeing more of that here? It's because of infrastructure, right? It's because of ecosystem. There are no selling tickets, doing the logistics of events. The last time most Nigerians had a positive experience at a big event is a long time ago. So we have to create these experiences. So you have positive memories, like muscle memory when you play sport. You know, the memory has to be there for you to be able to execute. So I think that I'm very positive. I really believe that we came from nothing. I remember sitting in Alaba and Idumota on Papa Road with negotiating on cassettes, CDK cassettes. I remember
with Mrs. Okoro.
Of course, with Mrs. Okoro, arguing with T-Joe, big boy, we used to call him Jigger. T-Joe, we argue with him. You spent all your money, you made an album, CD, you give it to him, he'll give you 30 naira. The blank CD is selling for 70 naira. I'm looking at him like, is this madness? Is this madness? That's when we stopped giving the CDs to the people in Alaba. We said, okay, fine, we'll bust them, we'll go straight to YouTube, put it on the DSPs. Then ringtones came, and some of the guys started making money on ringtones. Do you understand? And then the brands start getting involved, because the average age of Nigerians is 19. If you want to connect to young people, you need to use investment, the back infrastructure, the understanding of the business case, the ability to unlock the assets and hand it over to the private sector. They're all connected. It's all the same thing.
Okay, so
only Nigeria stops Nigeria.
Yeah, we missed some part of the stuff you said, but we'll get to it. It's a segment where we take questions from the audience, and I've got a few here. There's one from an anonymous attendee. I wonder why he or she didn't put a name. It's on the IDICE program. It's got a target of about 700 million, I think, for the digital and creative economy. I'm worried that those in tech will have the upper hand in accessing those funds, because creatives are sometimes bad at fundraising. The film industry is doing better now. Do you have any plans for making sure poets, dancers, etc., are not left out of the IDICE fund?
I think the most important thing is this: get involved, get online, get the information. and get connected. Of course, you can reach out to our agency, any other agencies that can support you. The IDICE fund, 50% of that fund is reserved for the creatives. That has already been done by the minister, who was on the board of the IDICE, and the minister agreed with the minister, the vice president, and the minister of the digital economy. I think I can say that one with confidence. They had a town hall at the Omniverse conference last month with about 600 people specifically on that one issue, with the IDICE lead, Ife, who explained how IDICE is working and what that is about. But definitely, I think the creative industries, and that's part of the capacity building that needs to happen, right? People need to understand and learn business skills. You know, just because you're a great creative doesn't mean you're a great business person. So you don't have to be a great business person. Find a partner, find a lawyer, find somebody that can act as your business manager that can help you with your business plan and help you with your actual business strategy. Because one of the things maybe Nigerian creatives don't understand is that none of the Americans or the big brands you see are actually solo. They're all sitting there with full teams, full back end, everything, administration, legal, financial, it's all in place. And that's why they're successful. Nobody's by themselves.
There's a question.
The collaboration and professional services is critical.
Yeah, I've got a question here from Denja Abdullahi, but I think you've kind of answered it in this last comment. And it's really about the literary arts being carried along, be part of the creative economy. As it appears, it's an aspect of the creative economy not receiving enough interventionist measures. I think
these are not, I think the literary people, like anybody else, for me, the literary arts and the written word is the foundation of almost everything creative. So once you put it down on paper, you write it, the idea may become a product, a platform, a story, a poem, a film, a song. You understand? It's endless, right? Of course, it could be a poem, a book, a play, a film. So I think, yes, again, as I just said, you know, if you know you're not particularly strong at business, get your closest friend who is good at business to take you through the IDICE stuff and process. I think on their websites, you will see a lot of information. If you don't have that information, I said again, you can reach out to our council. We will publish that information publicly for everybody to see and access. The whole point is that we want everybody in Nigeria to get access. It's not just people in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. We need people who are in the village, nowhere, that don't think they're being considered, to understand that this thing is also for them.
Yeah. And Obi, we trust that you're going to leverage all the social media networks, you know, just to push information.
100%.
And not the old thing we do in government where we're waiting for people to come to government to get information, you know? So the same way we run businesses, we're going to push the information, they'll get it.
100%.
There's a question here from Olufisayo Bakare. Can you talk about the new animation, Iwaju, that has hit the American market on Disney Plus, but is not accessible to us in Nigeria, although it's a story that originated from here? Why do we have such a situation where our stories are being enjoyed by the world, but we don't have access to them? Obi.
As Disney Plus can answer that, is beyond my pay grade. I mean, the bottom line is, if you get one of those IPN things, you'll be able to watch Disney Plus.
VPN?
Yes. The VPN will enable her to watch Disney Plus. Disney Plus have their own business reasons why they have not yet opened into the Nigerian market, but we believe they are coming. But the most important thing we are happy about is that they invested, supported, and co-produced Nigerian IP, made it available to the world, and everybody's loving it. I too am also waiting to watch it.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of young artists, you know, musicians, comedians, etc., using YouTube as a platform to get their stuff out. I was listening to, I don't know if it was you or Larry Gaga's interview a few days ago, you know, where he said in the past, the record labels would kind of discover an artist, but now the artist needs to do more to be discovered. Now, we've seen what Marvin Records has done. For folks who are starting out, you know, what are some of the things they need to pay attention to ensure that they become attractive, you know, to the big money folks outside Nigeria? They become attractive investments or targets or investment targets for some of the younger folks coming up.
Yeah, I think, you know, for any new artist anywhere in the world, especially in Nigeria, it's very competitive. Yeah, you're looking at a market where there may be 200 new releases a month. Nigerians are super viral, and they're putting out content every minute of every day. So the key thing will always be the same thing. Number one, be original. Be yourself. Don't be the next WizKid. We have WizKid already, right? A lot of people call you and they say, I'm the next WizKid, I'm the next Rayma. And I tell them, I don't need another WizKid or another Rayma. We have those guys. Be the first version of yourself. So be the first version of yourself. That's number one. Number two, you have to build your audience. Now with the digital platforms and DSPs, we can track your activity. We can see the heat map of where people are listening to you. And you can see that as well. The labels can see that. And that's what they use to track and measure. And hip hop is what changed all these things, because before the A&R for the label would be going out to clubs and bars just looking for talent. But hip hop, it was so competitive that the rappers were going out everywhere trying to perform. And as they're trying to perform and they're breaking records, they break in market A. America has 50 different markets. It's 50 states, right? It's like 50 countries. So that's how it works. They have to break every single market. So now if you become a regional act in America, you're one of the biggest acts in the world. If you become a national act in America, you're the biggest act in the world. It is what it is, right? So that's how you do it. In Nigeria, if you're in a Port Harcourt, you have to become dominant in Port Harcourt so that Lagos is paying attention. Vice versa, no matter where you're based. Odumodu Black came out of Abuja. He's massive now. He's being paid attention to everywhere in the world, and it's over the last 18 months, right? So there's no guarantee, because it's the music and how hot the music is and how it connects. That's actually the principal guarantee. So you got to get the music right first. Then you've got to have unique marketing strategies. Then you've got to have performance, energy, and connection, where you're doing special shows, you're doing, it's hard grind, brother. There's no easy nothing. There's no artist you're seeing that is massive that has not done 1,000 days of hard struggle and grind before they became an overnight success. That is the reality. Every overnight success is only an overnight success to the consumer that found out about it that day. The guy's journey to being an overnight success is typically 5 years. So that's just the reality. But the issue is there are platforms now that enable you to see your metrics, to see where you're being heard, where you're not being heard, so where you can build, where you need to, focus less. So technology is a huge asset for anybody who's trying to build a career in music, in comedy, in sketch comedy. You're pushing that kind of content where you need to go viral. Because what then happens is the bigger you get, then your deal options with the record label adjust. So then it becomes, they're just really giving you distribution and a budget to go and play. If they're going to have to build you the whole way, that deal is not going to be a great deal for you. But if you already built yourself to a position where you're like bulletproof, all you need is to amplify your distribution. That's the David O position. That's the WizKid position. That's the burner position. But it took 10 years. But for the next generation, it took Rayma 3 years, right? So maybe the next guy will take 1 year.
So Obi, I think you just spoiled it with the last comment. I think, there's no shortcut. So let no one think it's going to happen in a year. The guy who breaks through in 3 years has probably been doing a lot of back work that wasn't visible to us, but you've got to put in the hours, you've got to put in the grind, and the platforms exist. So just keep putting out your stuff and you keep getting better with time.
And build your networks, build your networks.
Exactly. Be known in the industry, do stuff for people, build your network, etc. There's a question here from Efwa do you think that through the agencies, the government can create a more enabling environment for public-private partnerships for the creative sector and enable further opportunities across Africa and across varied continents? So essentially, how can the agencies help create a more enabling environment for the sector?
Well, I think that's what we're here to do. I mean, from my perspective, from my agency, I can say clearly here, we are open to collaboration. We're open to private sector partners. We're open to multilateral partners, development partners, and public sector partners. We believe in partnership and collaboration because we believe in aggregation. By aggregating our energies and leveraging our possibilities, we are going to win, and we will win together. So that's what our agenda is. In terms of partnership, we're not afraid of partnership. We're open to partnership with everybody. We could be partnering with law firms. We could be partnering with associations. We could be partnering with individual companies. We partner with consultants. The key thing about it is, what is the objective? What is the agenda? As long as we're all trying to get to the same place. which is the place where we have a sustainable built environment for this sector, which is affecting 49 different industries, that enables 10 million or more jobs in this country, creates opportunity for the multiplier that gives, the live touring circuit in Nigeria, the sports and entertainment connection, the digital technology ecosystem, bringing us innovative solutions to solve some of the problems you talked about for the creative economy. That's where we need to go. A big part of this plank is academia. We didn't talk about academia, but we do have academia. We do have a lot of resource. I was delighted to learn from Professor Chefu last month that there is something called Tetras, right? Which is over 2 billion pages of academic research from Nigerian professors and PhD students from Nigerian universities that has been aggregated and collated into one platform. And, you know, these are the things that we need to pull out and bring out. In any other country, that one resource is $1 billion resource. You know that industry will be in that information every day, trying to extract the value, trying to license the value, trying to take that knowledge and bring it as product. And I think these are the things that excite me, the possibility of that connection and collaboration between industry, academia, and the private sector and government. And government role has to be sort of a light touch, right? I don't think you want to see Obi executive producing the show just because I know how to do it when I'm in government. There are loads of young producers that can do the show. But what we can do is create the framework for their show to make them money on a sustainable basis.
Another question from F1, I think it kind of ties with the discussion you just had now on academia. It's in terms of capacity development for creatives, what are some of the plans, strategies, and areas that Nigeria is looking to help these people upskill in the creative sector? So are there agencies that are focused on that? Is there funding that's dedicated to just capacity building? Who's going to run those funds? You know, how do we measure to ensure that we're actually getting value for monies that are put in?
Well, what I can tell you is this. We have something called the Creative Leap Accelerator Program, which is one of the key programs within the 8-point agenda for the Minister for the sector. And all the agencies are all signed on to that program. And what that program basically is doing is aggregating training providers on one side and matching their services to the needs of the ecosystem. And then on a collaborative level, the 11 agencies that exist in the ministry at this point in time will be driving those programs. We have a target to train 3 million people by 2027. So to train those people, we're aggregating the providers on one side, agreeing the curriculum and content, short courses, executive courses, and longer form courses. And then the agencies are going to be implementing it with the providers. So we're hoping that these are part of the programs that we're looking for funding for. So the funding is not there today, but the plan is in place. I believe the funding will come because I believe the president and the rest of the government understand the opportunity, because the opportunity is to give our people the skills to feed themselves. There are no 9-to-5 jobs hanging around, but there's a lot of opportunity for people, once they're skilled, to work for themselves, to build for themselves, build enterprises, build products, build services, and sell and earn income.
There's another question here from Robson Omunna. And let me kind of preface that with the work you and your colleagues did with the Startup Act, because I know it has a bit of a funding component in it. Now, his question is, the tech industry is faced with challenges of accessing funds, especially the startups. The banks are not ready to fund the startups despite submitting viable business plans. What would you advise for a startup? And this is from Robson, UT Hub Innovation Company. He put it there, so I wanted to put it out as well, you know.
No, yeah, Robson, I hear him and I hear his frustration. I think part of the problem, and that's part of the driver for the National Startup Act, is that the high street banks are not necessarily set up, retail banks are not necessarily set up to fund startups, right? I think that's a worldwide situation. Worldwide, you will find that it's private equity, it is insurance companies, and it's debt funding that drives startups, not retail banking. So in Nigeria, the National Startup Fund will be set up to do specifically this. There is a National Startup Fund, I believe, of 10 billion naira. And I think the portal is up now, and NITDA is the implementing agency for that. Again, it's the gap between policy and implementation. I can tell you, as somebody who's a core member of the original team, I think many of us are still a bit disappointed at the speed of implementation because we managed to almost set a world record in formation of the bill. But now you need to get to the implementation so we can see someone like Robson can say, hey, I actually got money from the National Startup Act. At the same side, Robson, please go and check out iDice. iDice, 50% of that money is for startups. It's for startups in the tech ecosystem and digital ecosystem. It's right there, it's available. They're not going to take your grandmother. They will definitely listen to your ideas. And if I was the one writing the check, you might have the check already.
Okay, so I've got a question from Adedumade Oniboku. He said, what do you think about the visual arts industry, right? And how it can also get more international recognition and FDI for the country. He says he's passionate about this and he signs off art lawyer. So I don't know if he's a visual artist or a lawyer or a combination, but the point is well made. How do we
maybe has the left side?
Maybe he's left law and moved to art, you know. But how do we get more of our visual arts on the international stage? I think the artist, I think the highest artwork sold at Christie's Nigerian is about $1 million.
I mean, listen, I mean, first of all, the greatest African artist, I'm just going to claim him right now, is my late uncle, Benenwong. And
exactly.
He's had a number of pieces that sold for over £1 million. But of course, there's Njideka Dora Akunyili Jr., who has many pieces that have sold over $1 million. There's I can't remember his name for some reason now, but the Ghanaian legend who was based out of Nsukka for 35 years.
Yeah. I remember his name.
Whose pieces are minimally $1 million. So I think Nigerian and West African and African visual arts is also globalizing. It's heavy. Bonhams have been doing the African contemporary. Thank you, Ifua. Bonhams have been doing the contemporary African art exhibition now for over a decade. Sotheby's have also joined the fray. The contemporary I-54 art contemporary fairs around the world. And obviously Artex Lagos has been a massive influencer as the biggest art fair in West Africa. But specifically, what I would say is yes, the visual arts are front and center, both of my agency's plan, the ministry's plan, and specifically the National Gallery of Arts, which is really perhaps the home of the visual arts ecosystem. And so, yes, it is front and center. You can engage. They're always open to listening to ideas. Nigeria's pavilion at the Biennale in Venice opens today. The minister is there. We are present. We are trying to be present where we should be present. Where unfortunately Nigeria has been absent in many, many spaces and in many places. But in this sector, in these places at this time, we want to be present, want Nigeria to be in the room, want Nigeria to show its leadership, not just its leadership, but its talent. And I know that Nigerian visual arts is unbelievable. It's extensive and it cuts across many different genres, many different styles, and it's fully national. The Zaria School, the Nsukka School, there's a lot of stuff going on, Yabatech, of course, and of course, all the galleries we see everywhere. So I think he's totally correct. For me, it's a big priority area.
Let me put two ideas on the table, Obi. So last week, I was at the Torpedo Factory. It's a collective for artists in Alexandria, Virginia. I went to visit Tony Sofo's studio. And, this is an old building converted, cut into little studios. They've got about 70 galleries working out of there and maybe another 10, it's a collective, right? It goes back to the discussions you've had on different platforms about infrastructure, right? Having spaces for artists to work out of. That's number one. Then number two, the kind of thing you did with the Journey of the Beats, shouldn't we be thinking of doing something around the visual arts, just to showcase the diversity, the depth, the beauty, the ingenuity of our visual arts as a way of pushing out that narrative that we're here. Because I think part of the problem is that we're not telling enough of our stories, right? So which agency in government can enable this, not do it, but enable it to happen? Is it you?
Well, it's me to an extent because I do have a mandate over the visual arts, but we would collaborate extensively with the National Gallery of Arts, which actually came originally, I believe, out of this agency. But what you're talking about is storytelling, right? And the storytelling is something which is so weird. When we're growing up as children, we were told Africans were the best storytellers. You sit under the tree and they tell the story, whether it was Tortoise Club or something else. When we grew up as adults, and Africans don't take stories seriously, but they spend all their time complaining about how they are framed, of how they are projected and how they are talked about. It is our fault. We have not told our stories. We haven't even told our stories to ourselves before we start talking about people outside our countries. And I think that that is a fundamental issue. And it comes back to something where you started from earlier. Sorry to digress. My friend, good friend Femi Edubemi talks about this all the time, and he's so on point that when you talk about a country, you must be intentional in building your country and its narrative. And when you build it properly, you strengthen yourselves. I can tell a story in a way to weaken us, or I can tell a story in a way to strengthen us. And I can find, even in a tragedy, you can find strength. Even in war, you can find peace. Even in desolation, you can find victory. And I think we have to be intentional about telling our stories across multiple media and multiple formats. Visual arts is one of them. Television is another one. Music is another one. Dance is another one. Food is another one. So all of these things are different lenses for storytelling. So I agree, we are available. One of the things that I just did is I have 10 zonal offices in my agency, right? And I just redesignated them as creative hubs because they have not really been operational. So don't be surprised if you hear next month, I jacked your idea and there are people doing art in my offices around the country because we want the offices to be connected to the community. Right? We don't want the offices to be disconnected. If you're disconnected from the people you're supposed to be supporting, you have already failed. So I think that thing of co-working spaces, co-creation is actually the hallmark of the creative industries. In the creative industries, it's very difficult to produce by yourself.
It leads me to this question from Ato Arinze, the renowned sculptor. What plans do you have for your Lagos office, the red brick building, which used to be the best and first purposefully built gallery space in Nigeria? And I'm sure you know which he's talking about.
Yes, I know what it is.
Yeah, let me slide. And in fact, in the shadows of that building, you have the United Studio of Artists, which is kind of a collective that the artists created for themselves, and fantastic space.
Yeah, you have the Artist Village, you have the Little Theater.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is a resource situation, right? The situation of that space is terrible. I went to visit it. I did an official tour of the facility last month. It was an eye-opener and an eyesore. But I made a commitment to those people there. We are going to fix it. I'm not going to fix it alone. We're going to fix it together. And we're going to go and fight for the resources for them to be able to retrofit the place, renovate the space. And when I walked into the Little Theater, the first thing I said was that actually, this is the perfect place to shoot music videos.
Exactly.
So what we need to do, the dancers are using that place extensively. A lot of people use that place for rehearsal, for performances. But what we need to do and what we want to see happen is our facilities come alive. And they're going to come alive by collaboration with the private sector, with multilaterals and with governments. So we don't believe that I'm not a magician. I'm not going to click my finger and you come there next week, Monday, and the place is spanking. But hopefully, if you come there in a few months' time, you see some difference. That's it.
And a question from Kadaria Ahmed. Does the money exist domestically to fund all of these ambitious plans, given the issues with the economy, or do we need foreign money?
The truth of the matter, the money is always here. Nigerians have the money. Whether Nigerians will spend the money is a different question, different answer. Hi, Kadaria. I think, foreign money, everybody needs foreign money, right? Every country takes in FDI. The money that invested into Maven Records in 2019 did not talk to any government. TPG Capital had a $750 million fund focused on the creative industries and opportunities in Africa. And through a subsidiary, they put $10 million in Maven. So when you do it right, the money will find you. I believe that Nigeria is doing it right. The Nigerian creators have created a situation where the attention of the world is in Nigeria. the attention of the world, the attention of investors and funders is on Nigeria. And if they continue to do what they're doing, I think we'll raise the money we're looking for. But we're not going to just look for the money in Nigeria. I certainly am not. I'm looking for the money anywhere the money is available. You know, I don't have any discrimination against money. Money is money. Dollar, naira, they're all money.
Yeah. There's a comment here, Obi, and I thought I should raise it. It's from an Ivie Betty Owa Ibinoba, right? And I think she says, the man who designed Queen Idia mask used for Festac 77, Joseph Alufa Ibinovia, is yet to be settled by the federal government. He's a Benin man, lives in Benin, and in his late 70s. I don't know how true this allegation is, but I think it's one that you can probably investigate. And
the first question I was going to ask is that her father? Because it sounded like her surname was similar.
No, it's a different. It's her surname is Ibinoba. Okay. And the name is Joseph Ibinovia.
Perfect. I think it's like this. I think, first of all, that's an unfortunate fact of reality in many countries and also unfortunately in Nigeria. But what I would say is this: the agency that looks after Festac, and I have to say to this, I was so happy. We found out we still have a lot of Festac 77 archives. We have over 1,200 reels of videotape from Festac 77. And we have, I think, a similar number of vinyl. So wow. that is stored and kept by the new DG, who is an old friend of mine. Oh, this is a young lady, Aisha Ogi, and CBAC, which is the Center for Black Civilization and Arts, is the agency that looks after Festac 77. If she can please share the name of the man, if she has the contact details to you, I'm sure Aisha would love to reach out to him and find a way to how we can make him right. The truth of the matter is that Aisha herself is a creative artist, a photographer, and an archivist, and we all know what it means when your IP is utilized without you. So I think it is important that such things, if they're brought to our attention, we cannot necessarily solve every problem, but we can certainly try to see how we can reach out and make amends or give credit where credit is due.
Exactly. And I've put our email address in the chat box. Please send us an email with more details, and I promise to follow up with Obi, and let's see what we can do with this situation. And we've kind of run out of time, but Obi, I wanted to give you like 1 minute to kind of make a closing statement that brings everything together.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. First of all, thanks for having me with all my cutouts and my power issues and Nigeria issues. But I think the fact we finished the session is part of the Nigeria spirit. You know, we know they carry last, but we will still do our. So we're here. And I think my message to anybody is to let them know that Nigerian creativity is alive and well. Nigerian creativity has a home in government. My agency is available. We are just building up resource and capacity to be able to support better. We haven't yet rolled out our roadmaps. We haven't even particularly reached out to the industry yet, because I first have to understand the institution that I inherited, what it's supposed to do, and how we can reposition it. The most important thing that I would say is that please believe, right? Please believe. I'm one of those that they didn't believe in us when we were starting the music industry. They didn't believe in us. Anything we were doing, they used to laugh at us. And I sit there today, and I remember Don Jazzy, the first time he performed for me at Storm 45 at 11:45 in 2005, they insisted on being paid, and I was arguing with them. So what should I pay you? If I tell you the amount of money we were arguing over, it was 30,000 naira. And the band was telling me that, boss, you go pay us now. You go pay us 30,000 naira. We're here 19 years later. They got $150 million. I'm proud to be associated with this movement. I'm telling you that Nigeria has so much more to give and so much more to do in this space. And frankly, the future is limitless. I'm proud to be Nigerian. Thanks for the conversation.
Obi, thank you so much. I mean, it's always a joy talking to you. Your passion for the industry, your passion for Nigeria, you know, just brims over, and it encourages the rest of us, you know, to continue to believe. And for everyone, you know, who's joined this conversation, I invite you to join us again in 2 weeks' time, 2 Wednesdays from now, where we'll have a chat with Professor Kingsley Moalo, and the topic is on the way out of poverty. But for joining us this time, thank you so much. We'll push out the video once it's edited and ready, and we'll also push out the transcript, that will be a bit annotated with references, etc. So again, thank you so much as we continue to push this idea, and one day we'll get it right. Obi, thank you.